A family came home from a celebration dinner. Within seconds, a masked gunman ambushed them in their own home. 2 were dead. 1 was wounded, and the police had no idea that the mastermind was standing right there beside them. This is the story of the Whitaker family from Sugar Land, Texas. A story of the perfect American family, a proud graduation dinner, and a son who fooled everyone. This true crime case has a twist so dark and unexpected, you won't believe it until the very end. Warning: this story contains details of a violent crime. Viewer discretion is advised. Sugar Land, Texas, December 10th, 2003. The Whitaker family seemed to have it all. Kent Whitaker, a successful construction company comptroller, his wife Tricia, a dedicated elementary school teacher, and their 2 sons, Kevin, 19, a freshman at Texas A&M University, and Bart, 23, about to graduate from Sam Houston State University. The neighbors described them as the perfect family, the kind everyone secretly envied. They lived in an affluent, safe community. They went to church. They celebrated every milestone together. And that night, December 10th, was supposed to be one of the best nights of their lives. Bart had just completed his final university exams. He was about to graduate with his degree. His parents were thrilled. This was what they'd worked for, what they'd dreamed of. Their oldest son succeeding, making them proud. To celebrate, Kent and Tricia gave Bart an expensive graduation gift, a $4,000 Rolex watch. Then, the whole family dressed up and went out to dinner at Scoopy, a popular seafood restaurant nearby. Photos from that night show Bart smiling for the camera. A clean-cut, handsome young man, surrounded by his loving family. His parents beaming with pride. His younger brother grinning beside him. Everything seemed perfect. Everything seemed normal. But by the end of that night, 2 of them would be dead.
At 8:15 p.m., the Whitaker family returned home from dinner. It was dark outside. The porch light was on. Kevin opened the front door first and stepped inside. And that's when everything went to hell. A figure, dressed entirely in black, wearing a ski mask, was waiting just inside the door. In his hands, a gun. Bang! Kevin was shot in the chest. He collapsed immediately. Tricia Whitaker was right behind him. Bang! She was shot in the chest, too. She fell to the ground beside her son. Kent Whitaker was next. Bang! The bullet tore through his shoulder. But Kent didn't fall. Wounded and bleeding, he stood there in shock, trying to process what was happening. And then, Bart came rushing into the house from outside. He'd been at his car, supposedly looking for his cell phone. He heard the shots and ran inside. The masked gunman turned and shot Bart in the arm. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the intruder fled out the back door. Bart chased after him, yelling, trying to catch him. The neighbor, Cliff Stanley, heard the gunshots from next door. He ran over and found an absolute nightmare. Tricia was on the floor, bleeding, barely conscious. She looked up at him and whispered, "Someone shot us. You need to go. He could still be here." Kevin was already gone, dead in the entryway of his own home. Tricia was dying. Despite the neighbors' attempts to help her, despite praying over her, Tricia Whitaker died there on the floor. Kent Whitaker, despite being shot, survived. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. And Bart? Bart had been shot in the arm, a non-fatal wound. He was treated at the hospital and released 3 days later. The police arrived at a horrific crime scene. A mother and son, murdered in their own home. A father, fighting for his life. And a community, absolutely terrified. Because the killer was still out there. The Sugar Land police began their investigation immediately. At first, they thought it was a burglary gone wrong, a home invasion. random violence. But the crime scene didn't match. Electronics were still there, TVs, computers, valuable items, all untouched. Nothing had been stolen. The drawers had been opened, like someone was searching for something, but nothing was taken. This wasn't a robbery. This was something else. The police interviewed Bart extensively. He told them he'd stayed outside to look for his phone after they got home. He heard the shots, ran inside, saw the masked gunman, chased him out the back door, but couldn't catch him. Bart said it was too dark. He didn't see the shooter's face. He couldn't identify anything about him. The detectives noticed something strange. Bart was vague. About details you'd think someone would remember. About a traumatic event that had just killed his mother and brother. One detective said, and I quote, "He was very vague about things you'd think he'd remember." But Bart was grieving. He'd just lost his mother and brother. His father was in the ICU. So the police gave him the benefit of the doubt. Then, they started digging into Bart's background. And that's when things got weird. The police contacted Sam Houston State University to verify Bart's enrollment, to confirm he was about to graduate, as the family had been celebrating. The police contacted Sam Houston State University to verify Bart's enrollment, to confirm he was about to graduate, as the family had been celebrating. And the university said there was no record of Bart graduating. In fact, Bart had dropped out as a freshman 3 years ago. Everything Bart had told his family for the past 3 years was a lie. He wasn't a student. He hadn't been taking exams. There was no graduation coming. The entire celebration dinner was based on a complete fabrication. The police realized they'd been looking at this case all wrong. This wasn't a random home invasion. This was personal. But they still didn't have enough evidence to arrest Bart. They needed more. Then, a man named Adam Hipp walked into the police station. Hipp was a former friend of Bart's, and he had an explosive story to tell. Hipp told the police that a year before the murders, Bart had approached him with a plot. Bart wanted Hipp to break into the Whitaker home and kill his family. He'd even given Hipp detailed instructions: where to hide, what gun to use, how to stage it to look like a burglary. But at the last minute, Hipp couldn't go through with it. He'd backed out. And Bart had moved on to find someone else. This was insane. Bart had tried to kill his family twice? The police now had their suspect. But they needed solid evidence. They needed to connect Bart to the actual shooters. Detectives started looking at Bart's friends. 2 names kept coming up: Chris Brashear and Stephen Champagne. Both had worked with Bart at a country club just months before the murders. The police brought in bloodhounds. They compared scent samples from Brashear and Champagne to evidence from the crime scene. And they got a hit. Chris Brashear's scent was all over the gun used in the murders. When detectives questioned Brashear, he claimed he was at Hooters during the murders. He had an alibi. Or so he thought. Then they turned to Stephen Champagne. And Champagne cracked. After hours of interrogation, Champagne confessed everything. He admitted he was the getaway driver. He said Chris Brashear was the shooter. And he said Bart Whitaker was the mastermind behind the entire plot. Champagne led the police to Lake Conroe, where he and Brashear had dumped the evidence. In a bag at the bottom of the lake, police found 2-way radios used to communicate during the crime, ammunition matching the murder weapon, water bottles, and 2 cell phones that Bart had given them. Everything pointed to Bart. But why? Why would a young man from a loving, wealthy family want to murder his parents and brother? The answer was as cold-blooded as the crime itself. Money. Bart stood to inherit between $1 million and $1.5 million if his family died. There was also life insurance policies, real estate, investments. But there was more to it than just money. According to prosecutors and psychologists who examined Bart, he was a classic narcissist, possibly a sociopath. Bart had been living a double life for years. He'd been lying about college. He'd been forging transcripts, creating fake grade reports, even setting up fake phone numbers that his parents would call to reach his professors. His entire life was a web of lies. And when he realized his family would discover the truth when graduation day came, he decided the only solution was to kill them all. The prosecutor said, "Bart thinks he's smarter than everybody else. He wanted to see if he could get away with the perfect crime." But Bart had made mistakes. He'd underestimated the police. He'd trusted the wrong people. And eventually, the truth came out. In 2007, Bart Whitaker was tried for the murder of his mother and brother and the attempted murder of his father. The jury deliberated, and they found him guilty on all counts. Then came the sentencing phase, and the prosecution asked for the death penalty. Now, here's where this story takes the most unexpected turn you can imagine. Remember Kent Whitaker, Bart's father? The man who survived being shot by the hitman his own son hired? Kent Whitaker did something absolutely unthinkable. He forgave his son. Not only that, he fought to save Bart from execution. Kent testified at the trial, begging the jury not to give Bart the death penalty. He said he'd already lost his wife and youngest son. He couldn't bear to lose Bart, too. The jury didn't listen. They sentenced Bart to death. But Kent didn't give up. For the next 11 years, Kent Whitaker fought for his son's life. He visited Bart in prison. He wrote letters to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. He campaigned publicly for clemency. Kent said, and I quote, "Forgiveness is absolutely critical if you want to heal from your loss. It is the only way you can get the bitterness out." Many people couldn't understand it. The prosecutor called Kent's forgiveness unbelievable. Other victims' families were angry. They said Bart didn't deserve mercy, that his crime was too heinous. But Kent was unwavering. He said, "We're not asking them to forgive him or let him go. We just want them to let him live." Fast forward to February 2018. Bart Whitaker was scheduled to be executed. He'd been on death row for over a decade. His execution date was set. Everything was prepared. Bart had spent his years in prison learning Spanish, teaching other inmates English, helping prisoners earn their high school diplomas. Kent said he'd seen real change in his son. 40 minutes before Bart was supposed to be executed, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, made an announcement. He was granting clemency. Bart's death sentence was commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He would never be released, but he wouldn't be executed. Governor Abbott said the decision was based on the Texas Board's unanimous recommendation and Kent's forgiveness. He also noted that the actual shooter, Chris Brashear, hadn't received the death penalty, so it seemed unjust to execute Bart. Bart Whitaker's life was spared by his own father, the man he'd tried to kill. Today, Bart Whitaker is serving life in prison. He will never be released. He will die behind bars. Chris Brashear, the actual shooter, is also serving life in prison. Stephen Champagne, the getaway driver who confessed and cooperated, received a sentence of 15 years for his role in the murders. Kent Whitaker remarried years later. He still visits Bart in prison. He still maintains that forgiveness was the right choice for his healing, even if others disagree. The case divided public opinion. Some people praised Kent's incredible capacity for forgiveness. Others were disgusted, saying Bart deserved to die for what he did. The prosecutor, Fred Felkman, said the parole board's decision made a mockery of justice. He said, "The 12 jurors' opinion means nothing to the parole board." But Kent Whitaker stands by his decision. He said, "I live with this every day, and nobody's denying what happened. But forgiveness set me free." This case raises difficult questions. Does a father's forgiveness change the nature of justice? Should it matter in a death penalty case? Was Bart's sentence fair compared to the actual shooter who received life instead of death? And perhaps the darkest question of all, can someone who meticulously planned to murder their entire family for money truly change? Or did Bart manipulate everyone, even from prison, just like he'd manipulated his family for years? This is the story of Bart Whitaker, the perfect son who wasn't perfect at all, the college graduate who dropped out years earlier, the victim, who was actually the mastermind. A story of lies, murder, and the most shocking twist of all, forgiveness. What do you think? Did Kent Whitaker do the right thing by forgiving his son and fighting to save him from execution? Or should Bart have faced the death penalty for his crimes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this case as shocking as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll be covering more true crime cases with unexpected twists, just like this one. And remember, some families have secrets, but the Whitaker family's secret was darker than anyone could have imagined. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.